Tyler is a two-time Grove City College graduate, earning his biology degree in 2008 and returning to complete his MS in Business Analytics in 2023. His career has spanned roles in consulting, data strategy, and solution engineering, where he has worked closely with organizations to solve complex challenges through technology. Today, Tyler is part of Snowflake, helping enterprises harness the power of the AI data cloud to drive innovation in data, analytics, and generative AI. He specializes in connecting business strategy with emerging AI capabilities, particularly in the healthcare and technology sectors. This year, he returns to Grove City to share the latest developments in Gen AI, building on the presentation he gave in 2023. Please join me in welcoming Tyler May.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone joining today. I think more importantly, I'd like to introduce two of the folks that are on the Zoom with me as well. We have Brian Baylod. He's a principal solution engineer at Snowflake. He has over 30 years experience in technology. He's held long tenured roles at Business Objects, Netezza, and now Snowflake. He's been at Snowflake for 7 years. He's a real expert in a lot of different areas of the Snowflake platform. He's currently based in Naples, Florida, so he couldn't join us today. But his fun fact, he has built an airplane from scratch, and he's flown it. Brave enough to fly it himself. And then also I'm joined by Pushkar Deshpande. Pushkar has over 10 years experience in engineering and data science roles. He's been at Snowflake about 2 years, and he's one of our specialists around AI, so you guys will probably have a lot of questions for him. Pushkar is 32. He's lived in 15 different cities in that time, so you guys do the math there. He's currently based in Boston, and he'd like to be here as well, but these folks are joining remote. So thank you, Brian and Pushkar. But I also want to thank all of you guys. Really appreciate the opportunity. We want to interact with you, so feel free to ask questions. I need to make sure I stay more on this side for the live stream. But yes, thank you so much. Today, Pushkar, Brian, and I will not be representing Snowflake. I just have to say that out front. We're here on our own. What we say is our own comments. That way we didn't have to go through legal to present slides. So these are our own comments. I just have to say that up front. But, okay. So the world is changing, right? Right now, the time it takes to read a text message is about 10 seconds, right? An AI model can read every Harvard Business Review article ever written in 10 seconds. So our role as leaders and as individuals is to know how to ask the right questions. You don't need to know more than the next person, right? You just need to know how to ask the right questions. But there is a caution here, right? Can anybody tell me what's going on the screen here? Look closer. Yeah, but it's a mess. It's an old-time stopwatch, but this is an AI-generated image, right? I think when we get Gen AI-generated information, we look at it and we go, okay, that's right. I looked at this and I said, okay, that's cool. I put it in the slide deck, and then I'm like, wait a minute. 105, 20, 25, 30? It makes no sense. So be cautious about how you use AI. Of course, it's not the end-all, be-all, but it's also not the worst thing ever, right? So it's somewhere in between those two things. Okay, so for today, was anyone here in 2023? I'm assuming, okay, we did have one. All right, awesome. So I'm going to pick on you. So I'm going to give a quick update, right? I'm not going to belabor this. I just want to level set some of the terms and things, and then we're going to look at how things have evolved in about 2 years. And then Brian's going to talk through some practical applications. He's using AI in a lot of really interesting ways, so I wanted him to talk about how he's using it. And then we're going to talk about AI for business, talk a little bit about Snowflake, not a ton. It can be applicable across other platforms. And then Pushkar is going to show a really cool example and a demo around how we've seen some customers use the Snowflake platform. And of course, today's the day I forgot to bring my little clicker to advance the slides, so I apologize for wandering back and forth across here. Before I get into these terms, I want to say please interrupt with questions. Either raise your hand or just interrupt me. I want to be interactive. I want to hear from you guys, what questions you have. We have until 2 o'clock, but we'll stay as long as we can to answer any questions you have. So feel free to ask. So this is the same slide I showed 2 years ago. Oh, that's okay. I'll just wander. It's my excuse for wandering. So let's talk a little bit about some terms here. So generative artificial intelligence, it's a broad category of AI models, and it's basically generating content, generating text, videos, audio, and so on. And then large language models is a subset of Gen AI that focuses on processing and generating human language. So I think most people have used GPT-5 or Claude or Mistral, or there's hundreds of models now. And then the ChatGPT, which is Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, that's a specialized application, right? That's what you guys probably think of with ChatGPT, right? The interface that you can type in a question and get an answer back. And that was created by OpenAI, obviously. So again, this is going to be incredibly high level. I spent a lot of time on this years ago because it was newer tech. But essentially, how does ChatGPT work? Right? It's a neural network. So when you insert text, it takes that text as an input, converts it into a number, and then does some complex math to work its way through the hidden layers to an output, which then gets converted back into text. So what that actually looks like is if you were to prompt a simple question like this, like the cat jumped over it's going to look and try to find words that match it, right? And then it's going to pick. Generally, it's going to pick the most common response, but sometimes it doesn't because the human language it's variable. It's not precise every time. So if you put it in this same prompt, you might get 10 different answers each time, but it'll be similar. In my case, my cat jumps over my refrigerator all the time, so that's not on here, but that's what it would be for me. So does that make sense? Like I feel like probably a lot of people know the basics here, but it's really just finding patterns, right? And adjusting to the closest pattern that makes sense. Okay, so back in 2023, go ahead and shout out what we think this is, 100 million. We're talking about ChatGPT here. 100 million users, that's right, monthly active users. And then 175 billion. Does anybody know this one? Not users, it's prompts. So it's actually parameters, which is a measure of sort of the quality of the model itself. There's a lot more behind that, but I'll generalize in that way. And then 1.8 billion. Anybody? Monthly visits in March of 2023. So that was back in 2023. So let's look at now. 700 million. Again, that's going to be the monthly active unique users. 1.76 trillion. That's an incredibly large number. That's the number of parameters for ChatGPT 4. And this is no longer reported like it used to be. It used to be kind of like the badge of honor. How many parameters is your model? But it's become more advanced than that. And we actually don't even know what ChatGPT 5 currently has. They use some math equation to kind of get back to this parameter number. And then 5.8 billion, again, monthly visits in August 2025. I mean, to me, it's just an amazing amount of growth. 10% of the Earth's adult population is using ChatGPT. I mean, just think about that for a moment. So what does that look like overall? I mean, it's just, I can't imagine what it's going to look like in 2 years, right? I remember saying in 2023, if we have this conversation next year, it's going to be a completely different topic. And it really is. Things have evolved so quickly. So this is a huge eye chart, but I just think it's interesting to kind of look at the areas around AI. So back then, it was a chat interface. Now we're talking about co-pilots. I think every software has a co-pilot. At Snowflake, we have a SQL generating co-pilot. We also use a lot of different tools to help us be more efficient in our day-to-day. The ask to act. So what that really means is you're interfacing with an agent that asks you, should I do this or should I do that, right? right? So you're being part of a conversation with someone or something that essentially works for you, right? It's completing tasks for you. And that's really, I think agentic AI is what, if you've listened to podcasts or organizations, they're all talking about agentic AI. It's become the new buzzwords, right, this year. The different modalities, originally text was all really that was available. Now, unstructured data, semi-structured data, it's all being ingested into this framework and is being able to, leverage those for real-time insights, right? So think what we deal with on our team, we support the health tech organizations, and what that really is they're software companies that are building solutions for healthcare payers and providers in life sciences. And their doctors in the providers world, they're recording their conversations on their phone, right? That audio file then becomes an input to how they're sort of using AI. So there's a lot that can be done there. That's just one small example of that. Context, really the amount of information being pulled in is increased a huge amount. Open versus closed models, the state-of-the-art models back then were all closed models. Now there's a eruption of llama and all these open source models. So things have definitely, in my opinion, shifted towards the better, right? Because we all want to use these models. When they're open source, you can kind of use them a little bit easier. Let's see. So I don't need to go through all of these, but things have become cheaper and easier to use, and you have more applications than ever now. And then as a leader at the time, it was, hey, how do I write the correct prompt? Prompt engineering was the big topic. It's still important, and I have one slide on this next about it, but now it's all about how do I get ROI? How am I getting business value from AI? Because that is actually a lot harder than you think, because things that are cool might not generate money, right? So things that actually provide value to the world and to a business are what's important, and that's the next conversation. Not, hey, what cool things can we do with AI? It's like, how do we generate value from AI? So I just said prompt engineering is not that big of a topic, but I think there are some skills that I wanted to quickly go over this, because some people may not have that much experience with prompt engineering, but it's very important to create clear and concise language when you're prompting one of these tools, provide specific instructions, and you can even ask in the prompt to have the AI model create the prompt for you, right? And ask clarifying questions before generating a response. This is really important. I read an article last week about, think of a prompt or AI as a new employee or an intern, right? You wouldn't go up to a new employee and say, hey, I need you to build a whole new data model, new data structure. I need you to figure out how to pipe all the data between these things, and I need you to do this and this and this, right? That's not set up for success. You give clear, short, concise jobs for someone that's newer or an intern or something like that. So that's how you should treat AI right now, especially when you're coding. Do I have any coders in here? A couple? Okay, yeah. So we use Cursor on our team, and it helps build demos and create the art of the possible very easily. If you give it the full list of what you want, it makes a mess, right? So you take small incremental steps to build something actually useful. So any questions so far to this point? I just wanted to recap, get a level set on some some terms, recap how things have changed in the last 2 years, cover this briefly. Any questions or thoughts? GPUs are much faster at producing results on massive scale data, and so they're just faster. That's the quick and dirty answer. There is definitely a land grab within all the tech companies to see who can buy the most GPUs. I think 2 years ago, companies were buying way ahead of demand, and so that's why we saw those stocks, rise. There's a new version of or iteration of that. Quantum computing is becoming more of a reality than it was before. and that's going to disrupt that market most likely. So yeah, I think the demand is still rising, and so there's still this huge need for GPUs, but I think that technology is going to change over the years. The energy industry is massively being driven through AI too. It's insane. If you think about the carbon footprint of what you're doing, like if you're looking at making a new recipe and you're typing it in there, there's a carbon footprint associated with that recipe. But I digress there. Brian or Pushkar, you got any other things to add on that? It's okay if you don't.
No, I think you summarized it. You can think of GPUs as something that can do multiple small tasks at the same time. So they're extremely suited for these types of applications. So that's why GPUs are on the rise.
Perfect. Any other questions? I got one here.
Coding neural networks is very different than standard coding if you're just using like Java, Python, C, anything like that. So what are the commonalities that you would say that there are between coding and something like that and a neural network? Or if there's not commonalities in the actual coding of it, what commonalities are there in the thinking of what you're doing?
I think they're not all that different if you think about it. You're just using coding, and like there is more coding agents now than ever before. So all you have to do is define what tasks you want to perform, and they kind of see this, they have the similar type of a workflow, no matter whether you're coding neural networks or simple Python codes. So in my opinion, they're more similar than different. It's just, it has a lot more specifics to it, but it's not all that different.
Okay, great. Thanks for the questions, guys. We'll keep them coming. I think next we're going to walk into some practical applications of AI. Brian, I think we're going to pass it over to you to walk through kind of some of the use cases that you've pioneered.
Sure.
Okay, so now we can actually see you on the screen.
So AI in real life, I'm using AI at work, and strangely enough, my AI usage is being monitored. And if I don't use it a lot, they think poorly of me, because the more you use it, the more productive you are, right? Especially when we've got some really nice tools. Because, hey, we're a Silicon Valley company. We're making AI tools. Of course, we've got AI tools that are better than what the average company would have. So I'll talk about that. I was just at a medical conference last week, I'm in the healthcare vertical, and I was in a room with 100 physicians where they spent 2 hours talking about if AI could replace doctors. And I was very surprised by that, and I'll share some of my perspectives and what I learned from that. And then, I'm getting to be older. I've got kind of a retirement plan. I'm going to retire next year, and using AI to help plan my retirement journey. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. So first, I'm using 4 AI tools at work mainly, and we've got all the other tools blocked, right? And what's interesting is I've got my ratings for them. And of course, I seem to like the specialized tools best. Is Gemini, that's nice for changing my photos or rewriting an email, but it doesn't know much detail about what I do on a daily basis. But I'll tell you, this Glean tool that's trained on all our engineering information, it's crazy good. Like, I can just take any question from a customer, paste it into Glean. It'll give me a great answer with footnotes where I can click on the links and check the answer. It's great. And then if I get into sales data and I want to know what my customers are doing, Raven is pretty good at that. And that's actually querying our data warehouse and different segments of our data warehouse. And then when I want to do coding, Cursor is great for coding. That's a specialized coding tool. The only thing I don't like about it is it's a little slower. In real life, I could do ChatGPT and get the answer sometimes faster than Cursor does, but Cursor's integrated with GitHub. It's a professional coding tool. It's cool. So I'll give you an example of each of these first 3 that I've run into just in the last 2 weeks, where this tool's made me look good and made me happy. So first of all, I'll just describe what I mean by Glean. I mean, this thing knows everything that happens in the 8 most important technical systems in our company. We're taking, it's indexing our wiki pages. It's got the last 3 years of Google Drive. Every time some engineer creates a new Google Drive doc, boom, Glean knows about it. Jira's, all our projects, when all our new features are coming out, it's on top of that. For the engineers, they like PagerDuty, who's on call, who's the product manager for this thing, if there's a problem. Slack is probably a big deal. That's like Teams, our main communication chat channel. That's where a lot of that big information gets transacted. It knows everything that happens in Slack, and instead of reading 30 messages in a Slack thread, it'll just automatically synthesize it for you. We do have a Snowflake community on Stack Overflow. It knows all of that, GitHub, and also all the tech support cases. And so this thing's like having a genius coworker who's memorized all the Slack messages, knows about all our products, resolution to every tech support case, and even undocumented features in our product. Like I've hit bugs where I'm pounding my head against the wall with cursor trying to program something, and I go into Glean, and Glean's like, oh yeah, that's not gonna work. I'm like, okay, great. And so here's just an example I had 2 days ago. My client says, hey, I'm getting this weird JDBC error, timeout waiting for the download of chunk. And the query's not even failing. It's just never coming back, and I'm seeing this JDBC error in the log. So I just paste this into Glean, and it says, hey, it's either a security problem, DNS, firewall, or an outdated JDBC driver. And so I wanted it to look good. Our tech support takes like 4 hours to respond to the guy. I responded to him right away, and I said, hey, it's likely an outdated JDBC driver, but it could be a security problem. He updated the JDBC driver, boom. 5 minutes later, his problem's fixed. So I can go out of my way, help a customer much faster than tech support. And I've only got 2 customers, so I like to stay on top of them. They're both multi-million-dollar Snowflake customers. Good service is important. And then I noticed too, it showed its work, right? It had 16 sources backing this up. And then every little thing it said, outdated JDBC driver, footnotes 8 and 9. If I click on 8, it shows me a tech support link, that had a very similar case. And so I do check my work, right? I don't just like to cut and paste. I'll click on some of these links, and I'm trying to learn more myself and verify what's going on. Then to switch to our sales agent, we've got a couple different data warehouses. We've got a data warehouse with all the Salesforce and billing data. We've got all the customer support cases and contracts, daily product revenue. And so we've got dashboards that show us stuff about that. But a lot of times I get a question that's not on the dashboard. And I know SQL pretty well, but it's a pain. It's a pain to go in there and try to write SQL. It takes a lot of time. And I used to just have to do that when I had a question. But now we've got this Cortex Analyst where it basically has a semantic layer, just like a business intelligence tool on top of the data. And in the past, AI tools weren't so good at creating databases because they didn't understand the business context. Well, now this semantic layer gives you the business terms and the synonyms, sales, revenue, dollars. It's all the same, and here's the field that answers that question. And so our data warehouse guys like it because they don't have to fiddle around with the dashboard. If I've got a question that's not on the dashboard, I can just ask it myself. And so here's a question I got from a finance guy. He says, hey, you covered DataVant. I see they had a big spike in usage. What's driving that? And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, I've seen this before. It's their matching process. They're processing third-party data, matching it. They'll run a big warehouse all day long and create a huge spike. So I'd like to show them a graph. And I know SQL, but I don't really want to spend 30 minutes. So I go into Raven and I just say, hey, graph the consumption for DataVant. And by the way, just the warehouse called prod match. And so then it kind of tells me what it's thinking, right? It's like, hey, he's asking for this. I'm going to go get a query and generate a chart. And it did just give me the answer after about 30 seconds. But first it tried a query that got no results. And it's saying like, hey, the human here probably either gave me the account name wrong, or maybe even the warehouse was wrong. And I did type datavant, comma, inc, period. But I guess the periods have been removed. They're standardizing all these account names. But so this third one was actually right. And I did have the name of the warehouse wrong too. But it kind of figured that out. It ran a query and it said, hey, let's just do a wildcard on Datavant. And then I noticed I see a match prod where he's calling it prod match. Let's just do it for that. That's probably what he means. And so I thought that was pretty smart. Like me having the account name incorrect and even the warehouse name backwards, and the warehouse is like a compute cluster, it figured it out. And so here was the winning query. It's hitting one of our semantic views, and it shows me just the chart I needed, and even gave me a nice little description. It said, hey, this guy's asking about the question on October 21st, but if he looks back to July 31st, you'll see there's something very similar. And on average, there's a lot of little spikes, and this is all driven by Datavant's customers, so it doesn't really fit a forecasting model, but totally explain them. And of course, our finance is trying to predict revenue from customers, so this kind of thing drives them crazy, but they're just gonna have to ignore that. And a third example,
Brian,
this is a
Brian, can I interrupt you for
example.
Brian? Can I interrupt you for 1 sec? So I think it's interesting what he's showing because it's contextualized, right? It's taking data from all over the place, and you're not just asking a prompt and then looking at the available data and moving on, right? It's actually doing work. It's correcting the question, right?
Yeah.
So that's the ask to act that I was talking about earlier. I mean, it's very impressive. And Glean is a very impressive tool. If you guys haven't seen it, it's very cool. So I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Brian. Go ahead.
No, it's good to hear. You're reading the room, so I appreciate the help. I was in front of a CFO 2 weeks ago for one of my customers, and he said, hey, we've got this critical cost of goods sold project. Like we're reselling products to our customers, and the vendor I'm reselling stuff from gives us this massive invoice, and I really need to allocate those line items to the customers so I can understand the profitability of each customer. So one of the most critical things I'm doing. And here's what his invoice looks like. I said, show me an invoice. And one of the guys who worked for him got this invoice up, and what I see here is like a 5-page, $26,000 invoice. And he said, at least, it shows me the SIP code for each customer, and then it'll show me the line items. And so he said, for example, this customer should get $1,800 of this $26,000 invoice allocated to them. But he's like, hey, we have hundreds of monthly invoices. They all look different. It would be great if they would just put that in a database table. And so I actually took Cursor and spent an hour and showed him how I could parse these invoices into a database table. And a year ago, that would have been impossible. And the first thing I did that was smart was I just took some of those invoices, uploaded them, and I said, hey, design a table that has all the fields from these invoices. And it turned out there's about 30 fields across the 10 invoices I uploaded. And so at least now I've got a table that could hold what's on the invoices. Then I used our AI extract function. I told Cursor, I said, hey, this thing's smart, right? Like it can do OCR, it can do PDFs. I just have to give it the names of the fields, and it'll grab them from even a picture of a report. And so I said, hey, you've seen these PDFs now? Help me write the code to do AI extract, read these from a cloud bucket, put these fields into a database table. I had a little bit of back and forth for about 20 minutes, but I got that done. And then I even made a little invoice viewer program to display it. And so an hour later, after the CFO asked this question, I showed him where I'd taken his invoices and put them into a database table. And that was just what he needed to do for this cost of goods sold project. 2 years ago, I'd have said I couldn't have done this in 2 weeks. Now I did it over lunch. Basically while the CFO was eating lunch, I built this thing. So unstructured data is a big deal. 80% of the data out there is on pieces of paper. that's all fair game now for analytics and getting it into a database, because AI is smart enough to grab information off an invoice and turn it into a database table. And then this was my medical conference. Can AI replace doctors? And I'd have figured that these guys would have just been scoffing at AI, but the mood in the room was pretty somber. Like, you could tell they feel threatened. They feel like, they need to use AI to make them better. And they presented a study, and nobody really complained about this study. They said, hey, independent physicians looked at 195 real patient questions. These patient questions were all answered by a doctor, and they were also answered by AI. And the doctors preferred the AI responses 78% of the time. The AI responses were also much more empathetic. 45% of the time they were rated empathetic. The doctors were only empathetic 4% of the time, a tenth of the time. And then the quality was much higher too. 78% were very good quality versus only 22% for what the doctors did. And the doctors were like, yeah, they said, hey, when we write emails, AI can make our emails better. It's not surprising that it can make answers to patients better too. And so there was a lot of discussion about how they could use AI to be better. And they talked about this too. The president of the American Medical Association just last year said, hey, we don't need to worry about doctors being replaced. Physicians who use AI will be replacing those who do not. And I thought that was an impactful statement. And I saw a lot of the physicians shaking their heads, like agreeing with that. And then the chief medical officer of NextGen said, hey, here's how I view AI. It's like I have two people helping me. He said, I remember having an intern that was really good. And boy, this intern actually made me more productive. Like, they could do research, they could do data entry, they could do everything. Just made my life better. I was sad when they moved on. And then he said, I also think about it like my most knowledgeable college professor, the guy who really was skilled in all aspects of medicine. Like, I've got this guy just whispering over my shoulder in my ear, helping me. And that was impactful too. And I saw a lot of people, and the doctors in the room, really shaking their heads too, thinking, yeah, this is how they could use AI. And so it's not like they're going to be replaced, but they're going to be challenged to use AI and up their game. Much like I'm being challenged at work to use AI and up my game, right? Like, I've got to do a POC, in an hour now that I couldn't have done in 2 weeks 2 years ago. And then just the last thing, how AI can help me retire. I bought a couple of franchises. I did research with AI. There's this Alloy personal training. Basically, it's personal training for old people. What's cool about old people is they've got 70% of the nation's personal income. They need fitness. Many of them are not very fit. And you can actually help them, right? So I'm going to one of these Alloy things myself, and it's really helped me. They talk about lifespan versus play span. You might live a long time, but if you can't do what you think is fun, it's not that cool. And so working out, lifting weights, even if it's not a lot of weight, is a big thing for older people. And I like the financials of this, right? The startup cost is $450,000 for a location. Year 2 profit, $150,000 to $200,000. Like, hey, I'll buy 2 of these. I'll make $300,000-$400,000 a year after I retire. Because they say you've got to have something to retire to. And I feel a little more comfortable because ChatGPT has been a big help. I was choosing between 7 different territories, and ChatGPT was just helping me eat up the demographics. Like, any information I found, information it had, it did a really nice job. And then, I've got to form 3 LLCs. I've got to have an umbrella LLC. I've got to have an LLC for each company. Had a lot of good advice on that, even, using a registered agent. You've got to have a registered agent for your LLC. It knew a lot about them, which ones were best. And then just a cool thing, now I've done those 2 things, and now I'm looking at site locations, and this is up in Edina, Minnesota is one of my locations. Fancy suburb of Minnesota. And this is a 10-minute drive time map comparison. So I could be kind of in central Edina near the east-west highway or northern Edina. And that red shape is just a 10-minute drive time, and 90% of your customers come from within 10 minutes away. And so, of course, if you're nearer to a major freeway, your 10-minute drive time area is going to be greatly expanded, thus your footprint. And that was very easy to get to with ChatGPT too. So I feel a lot more comfortable in doing these franchises, just knowing, hey, stuff I run into, I can solve. And I feel confident that I'm making good decisions because, hey, I'm spending $900,000 on these things. It's a good chunk of my retirement. So back to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think it's amazing what you can use ChatGPT for. Like, I never even thought about doing, a spatial analysis like that. I mean, I think that's a pretty cool use case, applicable to almost any business, right? Unless you're only online, for example. But back to the medical conference that Brian was speaking about, I thought another interesting takeaway, I was there with him. There was a panel conversation, and one of the doctors went up there and said, everyone's self-diagnosing now with ChatGPT. If anyone in the room has had an illness, they may have gone there and said, hey, my head hurts, my hands are sweaty, whatever. What do I have? And it'll give you medical advice, right? It'll answer what it thinks you have. It never once says, speak to a doctor. And that's something that they were talking about. It's like we need to shift the mindset. Like if you go to WebMD, and you type in your symptoms, it'll say speak to a doctor pretty quickly on there, like confirm with a doctor that that's what you have. But ChatGPT it's a neural network, right? It's just trying to give you what it thinks is the correct answer. It doesn't know that you should go to a doctor, right? So I thought that was interesting. Any questions for Brian before we move on to the next topic? Question here. I'm going to give you the microphone though. Sorry, my hands are a little sweaty.
My question is a little unstructured because I'm not very familiar with AI, but I work as a data analyst, and I'm just curious if there are ways that you test or audit the output. Monitor is the word I'm looking for. How do you monitor and audit the code that AI writes or the structures that it generates?
Yeah, it's a good question, especially with those invoices. I guess you'd have to do some financial footing, like the invoice amounts are this much. After I run the invoice amounts through the OCR, I would expect the financial totals to match. There's one good way to check it. You could also do some spot checking on the SAP IDs. But I suppose it's like any software. You've got to compare a new system against something existing.
Yeah, thank you. Another question over here?
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think multiple systems have, no system is perfect. So you might have one system that has some errors in one corner. There might be another system that has errors in another corner. So if you have multiple LLMs trying to do the same job, then you can see and cross-verify their answers. The probability of all of them getting one thing wrong at the same time is lower than one system getting it wrong. So multiple LLMs and LLMs as a judge is also a concept that's picking up pretty well.
Gentlemen, this is all so incredibly mind-blowing to us, I'm sure. To the opposite end, are there any physical, technical limitations that will eventually have a diminishing returns on AI's ability to produce? What are the theoretical limitations? How far can it go? What can stop it? Seems like to me there always is in this life, but maybe not. I don't know.
Who wants to take that one? My answer is no, but Pushkar, Brian?
It's a tough one. We don't know what we don't know. This technology, believe it or not, is all the 3 years old, and we've seen some incredible things. So none of us can pretend like we know what 2050 is going to look like. So if your outlook is that far out, we don't know the answer to that. So
there are some smart people that have some pretty dark prophecies regarding AI, the whole Matrix type thing, right?
I will say at that medical conference again, the chief data officer of one of our customers made a comment, and he's been working in AI for, Brian, keep me honest here, he's a PhD, he's been in the space for 15 years, something like that, in AI, which is an eternity, right, for the AI world. He said that we are nowhere near intelligence, that we have the intelligence of a slug at this point. But we all know that that curve is exponential. It's not, linear. So, intelligence is growing. The machines. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
One thing I can say though,
go ahead,
one thing I can say though, the worst of the inventions have already been done. Like the worst that can happen to a human is human dying, right? All the tanks and fighter jets and everything has been invented before. So this cannot be worse than that. That's how I think about it, just as an audience. So if it makes you feel better or worse, it's not going to be as bad as that.
I'm thinking about how AI has been able to take what some people have spent their whole careers and lives studying and making it accessible to everyone from their home computer. Do you see people going away from actually studying to become physicians or engineers and simply becoming more familiar and studying how to best use AI for their careers?
I like to think not. I mean, I think we're all going to need to have something to do, but the roles may change greatly from what they are now. But I think people will still be involved in the process.
Yeah, I think, we've talked about this at a lot of different panels and things like that. And one of the things that I find to be very interesting is the entry-level job, because the entry-level job, in theory is someone learning the rules of working in a business. The overwhelming sentiment from that panel was that apprenticeships are going to make a comeback because you can't replace yourself, right, with an entry-level person if you've been in the business for 30 years, right? And so maybe you would get an apprentice who could then replace you in a few years when you're ready to retire, which doesn't directly answer your question, but I think it's an interesting topic to discuss, right? I mean, apprenticeships might see a return. We'll see. And I think a lot of that's due to AI. Pushkar, you have anything to add on that topic? Okay. I saw a bunch of hands. Let's keep going.
Yeah, so this is kind of on the topic of the Ask Agent that's giving basically suggestions for the prompt. One thing I've heard is a problem with AI is the black box of it, right? It doesn't really show its work that well. Is that always going to be a problem with these systems, just the way that they're built? Or is that something that can be solved similar to, okay, the Ask Agent's trying to fix the prompt, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think this is we've already seen great amounts of improvement. So if you remember, ChatGPT 3 was far inferior to what we have right now. If you ask a question to ChatGPT right now, it's gonna say, "I'm thinking." So that's a very crucial step that we've been able to see in the improvements in Gen AI. So the way it works is it reasons with your question. It cross-validates your question and tries to come up with logical next steps. So that portion of reasoning with your question is already present, and it's supposed to get much, much, much better in the future. So the answer is yes, it's going to be much easier in the future, much more robust in the future in terms of reasoning and finding flaws within your question, and reason in a way that it's giving you the accurate response.
And I will say tools like Snowflake Intelligence, which I believe Pushkar is going to show, it shows the thought process, right? And so if there's a mistake in there, it's no longer a black box, right? You can go and say, hey, that's not right. This is the logic, right? So tools are moving more towards that because people have seen that as a challenge. Yeah. Any other questions?
Rather, in the history, machine learning, the more statistical side of this was explainable, but not as explainable as the way large language models explain their reasoning. So I think large language models are have that reasoning from the beginning. It can never be perfect, but it still shows its work way more than machine learning used to show its work. So it's already off to a good start.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, good. 2 more questions.
So as the demand for training some of these large language models really increases and we're looking for more data, is there a concern that maybe we should have that some of the companies that are supplying this data do it more unethically, and some protection or privacy that we should really be thinking about now before they kind of get more than we would want them to, so to speak?
I think that the next forefront is private AI models, where companies are guarding their data and training it just on theirs. Like all the Snowflake customers, we guarantee your data is private. Any AI training you do stays with you. The public AI guys are pretty much shut off. A lot of the internet providers are kind of blocking them from their content.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that topic, but I think it's an interesting question, because you could easily do something unethical to get more information to train a model and have a quote unquote better model, right? So I think it's definitely an interesting topic. Okay, we have one more question over here.
Brian, you spoke about the semantic layer for querying the different databases. And I was just curious about that semantic layer, if it was trained on a particular department's keywords or terminology, because I know they can vary between different departments. Like you talked about dollars versus revenue versus income. What kind of keywords was it trained on?
Yeah, we end up having multiple semantic layers, just like you might have multiple business intelligence layers. And sometimes, Department A will be using some of their own tables, but they'll have their own spin on them and their own synonyms. So we can adjust to that through the use of multiple semantic models. And then the reasoning layer kind of decides, so, okay, you're this type of person, we're going to use this model for you.
Yeah, and semantic models really unlock data, right? Because it provides that business lens to the data itself. So if you have a business question, maybe a data person might not understand all the context, but a semantic model sort of fixes that. Okay, so I think we're going to move on. We have about 10 minutes left. Pushkar, I think I'd like to just go straight to your portion, and then I can stick around here and go through my section if we want to. So if you're ready, if you want to share your screen.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I can share my screen.
Yeah, we're moving into another practical example here and an actual demo of these features.
Can you all see?
Yes.
And can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So I'm going to talk about a really small section so that you guys get to see how exactly our customers are implementing AI in their healthcare applications. But at a broader level, AI is everywhere. AI is in all parts of healthcare, right from preventative care, right from diagnosis and early detection to clinical workflows and your actual doctor visits. Then there's AI in the treatment plan and precision medicine. AI is in a lot of portions that you don't even see yourself. When you go to a doctor, there is a whole billing cycle in the back end where your doctor's office speaks with the insurance companies and they figure out how much of the portion of your medical bills is paid by insurance versus how much is the patient responsibility. And then post-care analytics. So doctors have better ways to looking at you as a patient even after you leave their care, and they can monitor if you are at a higher risk of relapsing or readmission, and they can give you the better care using the power of AI. So AI is in all aspects of healthcare. We are going to focus on one of the aspects that's very cool, I find, revenue cycle management is really, really complex. Have you guys ever felt that you go to a doctor's visit or you get some sort of a small procedure done, and then your medical bills start rolling in, and they come in 2 months from then, and then 6 months from then you're still receiving some new bills. It's really, really complex, and it's confusing, and it's problematic. And we believe that AI is going to be able to help you in this case. So what is medical coding? Medical coding is a way to standardize and find some codes to all the healthcare services that you receive. So think about you going to a doctor's office just because you have a common code. You go to the doctor's office, they give you they speak with you for 15 minutes, give you a prescription for some medication, and then you leave from there. Just like a 15-minute visit. And then you go to the pharmacy, pick up those medications, and then you're good to go. All of the things that you just did are converted into multiple different types of codes. These codes are really important because that's how the billing works in our healthcare system. So there are multiple different types of coding, and this is a highly technical job. For a doctor's visit like that, for common code, it's easy. But when you're in a complex medical procedure, your coding becomes really, really challenging. So how do you deal with it? You need to do accurate billing, accurate reimbursement, and the people who suffer the most in this case are the providers, healthcare providers. Your doctors don't get paid soon enough, so they are bearing the financial burden of inaccurate coding. So this is a huge factor in terms of taking care of our medical providers. What's the problem with coding? It's a complex job. All the codes look exactly the same. They're like all pointing at each other. It's completely context dependent. One word can change code from one to the other, and that's extremely complicated. It's a highly specific technical job. There are many professionals who just study how to do medical coding so that they can go through each and every one of the doctor's notes and find the right codes so that the whole RCM process goes well. And missing code means that your doctors get paid less. So they might give you help with 5 or 6 things, and then they are supposed to get paid for that. So the services that they provided to you, and the insurance is supposed to pay for that, but they don't have all the codes so that they can get the right compensation for the requirements. So, want to use ChatGPT? Sure, you can. ChatGPT is good enough to give some simple questions and do some simple coding, but it's not going to be trustable enough in order to embed that within our healthcare system. So what's the solution for that? You have data for all your historic diagnosis and what codes were extracted by the expert coders. You want to use that data and fine-tune a large language model. Fine-tuning a large language model sounds complex, but it's actually pretty easy. You're just giving it a list of the doctor's notes and the diagnosis, and you're just giving it what codes were extracted. And then it can learn from those patterns. And now you have a very, very specific, hyper-focused model that is ready for enterprise-level medical coding extraction. So the reason why this is really helpful to have this process helpful, who does it benefit, right? You're thinking, what happens if we have the codes extracted very quickly? It's going to expedite your billing process, which means that you're not going to have bills rolling in every couple of weeks for 6 or 7 months. All your bills and all your costs would be transparent. It's going to create the transparency that we require in our healthcare system. It's going to enhance the accuracy of coding extraction and again, create more transparency. It's going to optimize the resource allocation for your doctors so that they can correctly get compensated and they can keep their practices running. You might think doctors are extremely highly paid and they are having the time of their life. Well, I was in a room full of doctors. They were all suffering because of the delays in in their operational cost. And that's a real a real problem of survival for them. If we don't take care of them, there are not going to be many doctors who can run their practices. It's already challenging enough for them to do that. Now let's see how it looks like. I'm a technical person. I would love to show you a demo, and here it is.
Wait, before you
so
show that Pushkar,
Any
one
question?
sec. Yeah, one sec. So doctors hate coding, right? They hate that process, and it also is very timely. And so I have a friend who's a pediatrician. He went to Grove City as well, and he is constantly getting pushed by the hospital system that he works for to have more codes. It's insane, right? I see people shaking their heads. The doctor's focus should be on you as the patient, not some nebulous codes out there, right? And so what Pushkar is going to show you is going to make this so much faster and much more data centric, right? Whereas in the current process, until this is actually deployed, it's very on the doctor and the healthcare providers to figure this out. So go ahead, Pushkar.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for adding that. One of the other cool things, sidetracking from medical codes for a second, one of the cool things that all doctors were absolutely delighted about was ambient notes. Ambient notes are a way for doctors to just start a microphone as a part of your visit, and all the notes are taken by the ambient listener. So it can listen to what doctor is saying, what the patient is saying, all the details, and it can create ambient notes like this. And doctors are so delighted because now they can focus totally on you as opposed to typing with looking at the computer and typing into their system, which is not the best experience for the patient or for the doctors. So they were extremely happy with that. So what ambient notes do is they look at all the screenings, all the prescriptions, all the specific nuances that are as a part of the conversation, and it creates a clinical summary for the doctors. Now what happens is after you get the ambient listening notes, this is like instantaneous. They stop the recording, the notes appear right there, and they can extract the medical codes. And once they do the extraction, all the different types of codes would appear on their screen. And then whoever is the right expert, they can look through these codes and they can assess which ones are necessary and which ones need to be changed. And then you can create sort of an approval or rejection type of a workflow. Hey, I don't agree with this code. You can maybe add an edit button and make sure that you edit the code or add the right notes. But you see, this is the CPT codes and the reasoning on why the AI model classified it to a certain code, that's available to you right now. So you can already see the amount of transparency that it has created as opposed to the status quo that we live in right now. So this is highly helpful. And then what they can do is they can just go on to the next logical step, like adding this to your medical chart and getting the communicating this thing with the insurances. So this whole thing is painstaking because there are not many expert coders who can support all our providers. So this is highly important for us. So again, going to a very narrow use case within healthcare, just to show you how easy it has become as opposed to waiting for weeks and months. I'm happy to take any questions here.
I'll add two things quickly. So Pushkar talked about fine-tuning an LLM, and not that we want to make this about Snowflake, but you can basically fine-tune an LLM with one line of code and provide it with the data, of course, in that line. And then the second thing is it's critical to have a human in the loop here, as for what we've been talking about, right? It's not perfect. Think back to that stopwatch that has ridiculous numbers on it. It might surface something that is not reality at all, and the doctor can then just reject it, right? So that's sort of the stance that healthcare is taking right now, is it's augmentation and keep a human in the loop so that the decisions are still the doctors, right? There were lots of discussions about like who's going to get sued. I think if you think about the world we live in, right? If there's any issues and the model told you to do it, and you're a doctor, right? Is it the model's fault? Is it the doctor's fault? And so that's why it's critical that it's an augmentation of the doctor and not it making decisions for the doctor, right? So keeping that human in the loop. Is there any questions for Pushkar? We got a couple.
So I'm not sure if I'll have the term exactly correct, but from what I saw there, where it was kind of like the doctor has the opportunity to fine tune and select like, oh no, I don't want this, or I do want this included. Is that in the future going to help AI have less AI hallucinations over time, so that at some point the AI could learn from that interaction to the doctor and start to really limit mistakes, because the AI learns from its previous data and history of, oh, this doctor X'd out these codes after having this conversation. So is the AI eventually going to be able to, not that you would ever take out human review from the process, but become so accurate that that review is not as necessary as it was in the past?
That is accurate. The AI models thrive on the feedback like that, on what was diagnosed, what was refused, what was accepted. And if you could add a more textual summary, so let's say instead of just having a yes or no, if you could have more like a, if someone is rejecting a code, if they could add their reasoning, just like a normal feedback, then that's going to help AI a lot more. And we already have customers who implemented this, and they are going with that kind of enhancement cycle. And the whole objective of this exercise is to reduce the administrative burdens from the doctors that they cannot afford to keep doing in the future.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Whoop. Nothing? Okay. Well, that was, I think that's excellent. I mean, we showed some Snowflake examples. Let me see if I can share my screen again. It's going to be interesting. I did that backwards. Hang on. Bear with me in the room here. Okay. Okay. So we're going to go through all these. Okay. So we are way beyond time. So I just wanted to end you with, oh boy, a couple parting thoughts. Okay. So here we go. I think we've illustrated this point, right? The AI of today is not going to be the AI of tomorrow. Things are really exponentially improving and growing and changing. So focus on staying on top of it. You have the unique position to have this knowledge, and then if you continually stay up in what's the trends are in technology, you're going to be ahead, right? I think Brian said this slightly differently, but AI is not going to replace doctors, right? But doctors with AI are going to replace doctors. Insert whatever role you have, right? In my role, I'm a solution engineering manager. A solution engineering manager that's using AI is going to be 10 times more effective than one that doesn't. So, take that as you will. And, it's not about knowing more than another person. It's about knowing how to use the right tools and being diligent and staying on top of things. So that's what we have for you guys today. I really appreciate everyone's attention and time. I'll leave it open for a little bit longer if there's any last-minute unrelated questions to the presentation. If there's just any thoughts or questions you want to ask some experts here, we got a couple. Brian and Pushkar, can you guys hang around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a strategic side note. I think I know why you named the company Snowflake.
Yes.
Because all snowflakes are snowflakes, but no two snowflakes are the same. Is that something to do with your methodology?
I love that question.
You can take that one, Tyler.
What's that? I'll handle it. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's not a great story. I mean, our founders are just two French guys who love snow and love skiing. But if you're a database person, yeah, if you're a database nerd like me, it is actually a style of data architecture. So Snowflake, it's people think of it that way too, the Snowflake architecture. All right, there were other questions. Here you go.
I was just curious about your thoughts on where implementing AI, specifically trained models of AI, really becomes more efficient in a cost-benefit analysis. For example, I work with a very small department with a limited budget. At what point do you think it really becomes maybe not necessary, but extremely helpful?
I can take a first stab at this one. So I think like what Brian was sharing, Glean, for example, allows you to be way more efficient in your role. And so the cost-benefit analysis is your time and your efficiency and your ability to execute in your role. I think what we talk to our customers about a lot is how do you monetize the AI that you're bringing to the table? And so a lot of our customers are building software that they're essentially selling analytics or data to their customers. It's all built on Snowflake. And what we're saying is if you're going to use AI, how does that change the products that you can sell to your customers? How can you think of monetizing that same information differently? Like, for example, could you create sort of a chat GPT that is fine-tuned or been given the knowledge base of what's in Snowflake for their customers? There's value for that customer, right? So can you charge more for that? Is there revenue to be had there? So I think you just have to look at, is it time, is it efficiency, is it additional products? Like, how are you helping your customers with AI, right? So your customers might be another team. If you're more efficient, what does that bring to them, Brian or Pushkar, you guys have anything else?
No, I think you summarized it really well. You can either reduce the number of hours that someone is putting on that task, or you can shrink the duration. So maybe it's the same number of hours, but you can just do it one after the other, and you can do it within short amount of time window, or you can save direct cost dollars. So that's how you can evaluate if spending on AI is worth it and is it returning the benefits that you're supposed to get. So that's how I would evaluate.
And there's either going to be a staffing reduction or more work for people. Like the doctors that are saving time with ambient assist and AI kind of were skeptical, and they're like, well, they're just going to give me more patients, right? Because they were talking about how that addresses physician burnout. And they're like, yeah, maybe for a little while.
Yep. Any other questions? I love these. Thank you guys for asking questions.
Thank you. So I am a librarian, and we often work with our patrons on trustworthiness of the information that they're getting from online or whatever. How can we be sure that the information that we're getting, especially from these more generalized, Geminis and what have you, is accurate? And along those lines, what are the chances of bad actors getting in there and tainting the information that we get in any of these platforms?
I think you have to teach people to be discerning, and you have to teach them how to ask better. I run into all kinds of old people down here in Florida all the time and tell me, I asked a question of AI and it was totally wrong. And, they didn't give it enough information. I mean, I get people asking me questions where I don't get enough information, and I have to say, hey, tell me more. And maybe that's one way to do it, is to have the AI actually say, hey, tell me more, instead of just giving you a quick answer. I think the problem is more on the human side than the AI side at this point.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Brian. I mean, it's all about people, process, and technology, and I think everything goes back to that. But, I think the right tools need to provide the right guardrails. So, for example, we have a customer that added a chatbot to one of their Power BI dashboards. And so they're able to ask questions on that dashboard itself, but what's to say they don't ask any question, And so they've created guardrails that kind of lock in what questions the model will answer. And there's a lot of sophistication around that. But yeah, I think it is definitely a struggle. I will also say that when Brian was showing some examples, it had the references in the answer. And I think that we're going to see that more often as we use these tools more and more. So I'm hopeful that people will interrogate that. They'll go into the source and say, hey, okay, this is actually legitimate or not, right? So I think it's all those things, right, need to happen. Pushkar, anything to add?
No, I mean, I always treat it like it's a puzzle and the answer is within that large language model. I just have to ask it the right way. So I'll give it a few tries before I start complaining about it. So if you have that kind of an attitude, people with that attitude are going to find ways and the models are going to get better. But there are always going to be people who just want it to fail and they'll just ask a vague question and not receive the right answer. So treat it like a puzzle, I would say. And the answer is probably in there. If not, you can add more information. But, yeah.
Right.
So I work for a company that isn't really embracing AI technology and tools. Looking down the road 5-10 years, do you see this as being a major competitive stumbling block that we'll face? Is AI going to present almost like a barrier to entry in modern business spaces?
What type of business is it? Can I ask that?
I work for a government contractor. The main reason we haven't really embraced AI, we have a closed source AI model that we can ask really basic questions to, but it's out of date. I don't think it's been updated since 2023, and it is not connected in any way to any of our files or databases. Basically, if I want to ask it for a formula, it'll give me a formula from any standard physics textbook, but actual groundbreaking information or being able to better organize or more productively handle data that we already have on site, it is not capable of helping in those areas.
I mean, I used to be skeptical of AI too because I had bad tools, and when I got this Glean thing, I was like, holy cow, I couldn't believe what it can do. So
Yes.
it's all about what tools you have, and I guess that's why I wanted to show you guys what's possible, because I'm kind of in awe of the AI capabilities that I have at work.
Yeah, so I think to answer your question directly, I think businesses that don't embrace AI they're going to be behind, because you can be doing, like Brian's example of, he did a POC for a CFO in 1 hour, which is a 2-week project, and it was all assisted by coding tools with AI. So I don't know the specific nature of the government contract work that you're doing, but I think when I was a government contractor handling the Navy's data for the Clean Act, right? If I had AI to write some of the SQL and some of the work that I had to do, I probably would have had my whole week's worth of work done in a couple hours, maybe not even that long. So I think the productivity gains are massive. The government's an interesting space, though, I will say, because a lot of contractors are afraid to use AI. So there could be some interesting competitive, right, nature where no one's using AI. But there are tools, and I didn't want to make this about Snowflake. There's Snowflake and other tools that kind of give you that walled garden so that your data doesn't leave. I think that might be something that your company should look into, because it's not a black and white type thing, right? You can still leverage the tools and still have the gains that you get from it, and not have your data be used to train these models or leave and be sent out. So there's options now that there weren't several years ago. So I think go ahead, Pushkar.
To add on to that, I think we've seen this before. About 10 years ago, regarding cloud, all the government agencies were extremely, extremely skeptical about moving to cloud. And now they are way more open than they used to be before. So it's just a maturity curve, I would say. I don't see a world where in 2075, government agencies are not using AI. It's just a matter of when they deem it to be safe enough. So it's just a maturity curve. Some are going to be early adopters, some are going to be late adopters. but it's going to happen. Like, it's just imminent, I feel.
Yep. Thanks, Pushkar.
So kind of answered my question in that response, but I work for an aerospace company, so again, a lot of government contracts as well, and likewise, we're not being encouraged to use AI actively, but it's something that over today is very interesting. I could see how it could improve my workflow, but main concern being, a lot of classified information or NDAs with suppliers. So how would something like that, how is that protected if a company, a commercial aerospace company, were to implement something? Is there benefits to building your own kind of system, or to using something that's an open source that's like trusted? Like you said, Snowflake has some protections. Like how is that advertised to people to encourage the use of it? Because I'm not seeing that in my business currently, and curious to see how that could change things.
Yeah, I think first of all, being task specific is really important. So if you pick a small task that has less exposure and less vulnerability, let's say, if you pick a task like that and have an extremely specific AI solve that task, then that has less exposure and you're still boosting your productivity. So being task specific is one way to doing that, so that you don't just let it do everything. Like, just don't let it send out emails using AI. That's first way to be kind of like limiting the impact of what this can do. The second way is to have fine tuning. Like I said, medical coding is as critical and as sensitive as it gets. And there is a lot of adoption of medical coding using AI right now. Every one of the systems is healthcare systems that's out there. They're adopting AI one way or the other. The way to doing that is by showing AI explicitly how you did it in the past, so that it comes within that same error rate as a human does. That's kind of the gold standard, I would say. So yeah, just those two ways.
Yeah, and going back to the government side of this, I mean, again, I'll say, I think I'll agree with Pushkar on the maturity curve, but also the capabilities that exist now that did not exist several years ago. I mean, there's Snowflake, other tools built on government clouds like AWS Government Cloud and Azure Government Cloud that provide that level of security that, government contractors should be comfortable using. And again, like if you're using a tool like Snowflake, the data is not leaving the boundaries. So it's someone like yourself who sees the value going to your leadership and saying, hey, like there's options out there for us. We don't want to get left behind. And that's where you can really make a difference at your organization, right? So I think there's an opportunity there.
The word agentic AI is really important. It's vaguely defined, to be honest, but agentic means task specific, right? So if you have a private AI like that running within your system that does not retrain ChatGPT or Meta's model or Google's models, so it's running within your system, and you're giving it like a narrow margin to do anything, then that becomes more secure.
Great. Is there other questions? Was it? Yep. Keep them coming.
So for somebody that feels like a small fish in a big pond when it comes to AI and just the rate at which this industry is growing, what resources would you recommend, like specifically for someone to get ahead of the curve so that we can go to leadership at our companies to be able to present ideas? Like, where should we be looking to see what applications that we can use it for, and just educate ourselves further on this topic of AI for somebody who doesn't know enough of it yet?
I want to hear Pushkar's answer. I see a smile.
I thought Brian was going to go. Brian, do you want to go?
All right. I mean, you can get a software vendor to help you depending on the marketability and budget that you're dealing with. If they smell out that you don't have access to money, they're not going to be too helpful. If they do think you have access to money, they'll help educate you and give you a lot of resources for free. Otherwise, you're kind of on your own. Like I pay for a newsletter from a guy about $8 a month, and he spends a lot of time. Like his full-time job is just doing AI research and talking about trends and talking about cool things he sees. And I think that's well worth it to spend $8 a month to get access to this guy's research.
Well, what is it, Brian? Who's the researcher? Sorry, putting you on. You can look it up while we're talking. I would say, like, look at the industry leaders. Sam Altman is one, right? I'll put our CEO in there, Sridhar Ramaswamy. I mean, these guys, they have a LinkedIn presence where they talk about, like, what's next, what they're doing, you know, and I think that's a good, I'm sure everyone's on LinkedIn, right? That's a lot of people put a lot of information on there to try to, you know, help drive what's next.
Can I ask a follow-up question? What industry do you work in, and what kind of a company do you work in?
So right now, I'm more so focused in the accounting industry. I'm in between careers right now, but I just feel like with AI, there's so much room to explore different options. And I feel like it's growing at a rate that it's going to be in every industry, but trying to figure out like where I can make my largest impact just by like personally educating myself to be like, if I wanted to go out and start my own small business of some sorts, like what are ways that I could learn more to implement, just generally speaking, I guess would be my question.
AI kind of acts like a trusted colleague or friend. Like I've got conversations going with AI about philosophical things like that. I mean, you can start telling it about your company and about your interests and start asking it for ideas on things that might be a good fit for you or might be a good opportunity. And I'm surprised by what it comes back with.
Agreed. And industry specification, and like we use the word use cases a lot. Use case is like a small portion of the work. So code extraction is a use case within healthcare. So you got to pick a use case that you care about, and then you can ask how other people are doing, and you can ask that to AI on how other people are using generative AI within that. And then you can start following those people. So it's more like once you're in the loop, I think you're going to learn much quicker. There are so many newsletters out there, and there is an application called Substack that has the most recent AI implementation, AI-related, articles and a lot of cool features on Substack. So that's how I stay updated with stuff. One of the cool features of Substack is that you can just click play on any article, and it's gonna use AI voice to read it out to you. So you can just listen to a lot more information about how people are implementing AI. So those are a few resources, and just like Tyler said, LinkedIn is a rich resource of how people are generally talking about AI. So you can follow the right people.
And my guy is on Substack too. It's Nate B. Jones. And he's got free content, and then I pay for his premium content because he does like executive newsletters, which are always cool.
Yeah, no problem. And I'd also add, just to they were kind of alluding to this, but just play around with it. The way you learn is just by playing around. I'm a huge coffee nerd, so I always put coffee questions into ChatGPT, right? And if you get a bad answer and you know more than the model, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense, right? So maybe you need to use a different model, maybe think differently about how you're posing the question. So play around with it. I think we have answered all the questions in the room.